Okay then, in today's video I'm going to show you one of the easiest ways to beat the Nightmare Soulburst IMPERIOR raid solo. So with that being said, let's jump straight on into it. First up, let's go over the team that you're going to need. The star of the team is going to be Harvesect. It only has access to one ability, so that's not super important. For the held item, we'll want something to increase the damage of our moves, so you'll either want to go with a Bug Essence or a Power Cuffs. For the TPs, we'll want 200 melee attack, 200 health, and 100 melee defense. This is gonna let us hit as hard as possible while also being as tanky as possible on the melee side as we can be. For the personality, we'll want Very Brawny, again to increase our damage output. And then for the negative personalities, we'll go with Dull and Clumsy because we aren't using those stats. Also for the UPs, we'll want our health, melee attack, melee defense, and range defense stats to be as high as possible. Whereas the energy, range attack, and speed stats we don't really care too much about. And then for the moves, we'll want Bulk Up, Parasitize, and Counterpoise. Next up is going to be our Square 1 user, which you can use anything that you want. I'm just personally going to be going with Malevolwax because it's really easy to get. Just to be aware though, you'll want the speed stat to be higher than 148. But for the Malevolwax, we actually don't really care what ability we get, none of them are going to be super useful. For the held item, we're going to want a Clutch Plushie. This will make it so we'll always live one hit guaranteed no matter what. For the TPs, we'll want 200 speed, 200 range attack, and 100 health. This is going to let us be as fast as possible, and if we do get to live longer than 2 turns, we can deal a little bit more damage. For the personality, we'll want Very Nimble. This is going to let us get over that 148 sweet spot, and then for the negative personalities, we'll go with Frail and Tender because we aren't using low stats. Also for the UPs, it is very important that we have a 40 in our speed stat, whereas everything else isn't super important. And then for the moves, we'll want Square 1 and Fire Breath. And our last backup Loomian is going to be Swolder, which we shouldn't realistically have to rely on that much, but it's here just in case our Harvesect gets critical hitted. Also, you can switch Swolder out for any other bug-type Loomian if you wanted to. I'm just using Swolder because it's really easy to get. But for the Swolder, we actually don't care what ability we get, none of them are going to be super useful. For the held item, we're going to want to go with Specialty Gloves to give us the biggest damage increase. For the TPs, we'll want 200 melee attack, 200 health, and 100 range defense. This is going to increase our damage output as much as possible, while also improving our range bulk as much as we can. For the personality, we'll want Very Brawny to let us deal even more damage, while for the negative personalities, we'll go with Clumsy and Sluggish because we aren't using low stats. For the UPs, the most important stats are going to be our melee attack, health, melee defense, range defense, and energy, so we want those to be as high as possible. Whereas when it comes to our range attack and speed stats, we don't really care about them that much. And then for the moves, we'll want Parasitize and Counterpoise, although just make sure to bring 2 extra random moves just to make sure our held item works. And now, let's jump into the strategy, which will work with all of the NPCs, but it seems to be the easiest with Luce's team, mostly because her Boneki has the Adorable ability. But anyway, we'll want to lead up with Harvesect and use Bulk Up twice. This is gonna let us deal more damage and take Primal Slashes better. We actually don't really need to worry about all of the other moves because we resist them. And once we set up, we can now spam Parasitize, which will do huge damage while also healing us at the same time. Which we'll want to do this until the IMPERIOR clears our stat increases. For me, this happened after the first health bar segment, but this could be postponed until the second health bar segment if the IMPERIOR chooses to clear its own stat decreases first. But once your stats have been cleared, we're going to want to use Bulk Up to start setting up again. Which, because I didn't end up taking too much damage, I can safely go for 2 Bulk Ups in a row. But if you end up taking a little bit too much damage after the first one, you can switch to spamming Parasitize until you're healthy enough to go for a second one. And once we're set up again, it's time to spam Parasitize also again. Which we're going to continue to do this until the IMPERIOR gets down to its last health bar segment. And once that happens, we'll want to switch into our Malevolwax. Because of our Clutch Plushie held item, we'll always survive the first hit no matter what, And because we're faster than the Imperior, we can then use square 1 to reset all of its stats. And if your Malevolwax is still alive after using square 1, then we can start spamming Fire Breath until we faint, but in this battle, my Malevolwax got knocked out right after using square 1. And after your Malevolwax faints, it's time to go back into Haversiect, which will, once again, want to spam Parasitize if we're healthy. Or if we're too low on health, or even if the Imperior is low on health, we can instead spam Counterpoise to outspeed the Imperior. And that should be the battle. Although, in this specific battle, I didn't need to use Swalder, which should be the case most of the time. But if your Haversiect does end up getting knocked out, mostly by a critical hit, we'll then want to use Swalder as our substitute. And if you do end up using Swalder, we'll either want to spam Parasitize if the Imperior has a lot of health left, or we can use Counterpoise if the Imperior doesn't have a lot of health left. But yeah, with that, you should now be able to beat the Nightmare Soulburst Imperior raid consistently. And of course, you can use this strategy with another player to speed up the process.